So a couple of years ago, my class went on a trip to DC, and I'd say it was pretty fun for the most part. We saw the monuments and went to museums and everything, but there's one day where we're all getting food, and we're by a store that sells used video games. So I just decided, I'm gonna sneak off, just to see what they have. And one of the first things I see when I'm inside the store is a copy of Donkey Kong Country for only $5. And I'm pretty stoked about this because I've been looking for this game, and I've just found it at a really good price. So I'm going to the cashier when he points out to me that the only reason it's so cheap is because the cartridge is busted or something, it's only being sold for spare parts. And I'm pretty disappointed, but I didn't want to just leave empty-handed and waste everyone's time for nothing, so I just end up grabbing Wii Music for $1 and just, head out. And to be fair, I didn't get in that much trouble for the whole stunt, This isn't like little Leo, he's running off, he's going to get kidnapped and sold on the black market, I was 17, I was already making YouTube videos at this point. But anyways, one of the first times I heard about Donkey Kong Country was from my dad. I was asking him about what video games he played in the 90s, and he said it was one of the best games ever made, but also one of the hardest. And I wouldn't quite say, it's anywhere near the hardest game ever made, it is difficult, but it is ultimately fair. It's not like Sonic 1 difficulty where you just get absolute bullshit. The difficulty in Donkey Kong Country is more about getting used to the physics, knowing how far you can jump, timing, that sort of thing. And because I recently started playing through it a second time, I can say that it absolutely feels much more fair than a lot of contemporary platformers once you're experienced with it. But what stands out the most here compared to other 4th generation games is the visuals. It was made at a time when everyone kinda knew that 3D graphics were the next big thing, but the technology wasn't really there yet, so developers were experimenting with different ways to try and replicate the feel of a 3-dimensional environment in 2-dimensional games. And what Rare did with Donkey Kong Country is that they saw what Mortal Kombat did, using digitized photos of real actors in place of traditional sprites. And they decided to try the same technique, but instead of photos, they created a ton of 3D models which were then digitized into 2D sprites to give the illusion that the game was 3-dimensional. And this was done for pretty much everything in the entire game. The characters, the objects, the backgrounds and the enemies and everything, all digitized 3D models. And this was received really well, The graphics were kind of the unique selling point that helped push the Super Nintendo over the line to beat Sega and hold everyone over with 5th generation systems just on the horizon. And while I wouldn't say that they've held up as well over time, they still look really distinctive. There's really nothing else that looks like these games. But what I do think has aged really well is the gameplay, and it's still really fun to play today. Basically, you play as both Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong, and you can swap characters at any time by pressing a button. Diddy Kong is more agile, he's faster and can jump higher, while with Donkey Kong you're tougher, you can defeat larger enemies by jumping on them. And whichever Kong is inactive, they're chasing behind you the entire time. If you get hit once, you lose the character you're playing as and are forced to swap to the other one. And to get them back, you need to smash these Kong barrels. And if you get hit again with only one Kong remaining, then you're dead. The controls are really good as well. The characters feel lightweight and responsive and there's no delays or anything. It's just really nice and satisfying to run around and dodge obstacles and jump on enemies. But I will say, there are some things I don't like about this game. When you want to switch between Kongs, you can't always switch between them. If you're on a moving platform, it just refuses to let you switch. And sometimes, if you're on a moving platform and stuck as Diddy Kong and a large enemy comes up ahead, you're basically fucked, so you have to switch ahead of time. And another thing about this game is that whenever you die, you just feel like a fucking idiot. For example, like on the moving platforms where if you forget to switch to Donkey Kong, or if you remember to switch to Donkey Kong but lose him early on, you just kind of have to wait until the larger enemy comes along and kills you. And then there's the stages where you need to jump between moving platforms. Sometimes you're jumping and then you just barely miss the platform and fall into the void. But then you see your second character trailing behind you and you're thinking, oh yeah, he'll land on the platform and I'll be able to continue. But it doesn't work like that and you just fall into the void and die. And I know it works like that in basically every other platformer, But the way that this game is set up, it gets your hopes up for a bit and then it just fucking crushes you. But despite this, I wouldn't say that the levels are poorly designed. Nearly all of them are really fun to play through and to replay with the controls and gameplay being what they are, and the music is also really good. However, one thing I have to talk about is the water levels. In most games, water stages fall into one of two categories. There's the ones that are just like the normal gameplay but underwater, and then there's the ones that are just like the normal gameplay but underwater, and just also completely suck. However, in Donkey Kong Country, the water levels are completely different from the normal gameplay. You're basically swimming through a giant underwater maze, having to mostly avoid enemies along the way as you can't defeat them here without power-ups. However, the controls in these stages are much worse than usual. To swim up, you need to tap the jump button, but you don't have very precise control over your momentum and often just get launched into hazards if you aren't being careful. Along with this, you have to wait before swimming down. Even if you hit your head on the ceiling and lose your momentum, there's a bit of a delay, so that's pretty annoying. But overall, I do like the change of pace here, and the underwater controls aren't really a problem outside of the late game. So yeah, for the most part I'd say Donkey Kong Country, I thought it was pretty good despite a few issues, and I definitely recommend checking it out if you've never played it. But other than that, let's get to the important things here. What happened to my copy of Wii Music? Well, what happened was that it was in my bag for the flight back, and my water bottle leaked, and now I have a water-damaged copy of Wii Music that I don't really want. But that's where the good news comes in, because for the first time in my channel's history, I'm going to be doing a giveaway. And if you leave a like on this video, you will have a chance to win a water-damaged copy of Wii Music that I bought in Washington, D.C. for $1. And if you just so happen to like this video, but don't want Wii Music, I'm going to find you, and you're going to get Wii Music whether you like it or not. But all jokes aside, thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you're all having a great day today. And peace.